Hello, my friend
Got
Fozzie.
it. Hello, my friend Kassar. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you? How have you been?
I've been well. I've been well. Personally for myself, it's been really good. Um, been keeping positive. Um, you know, you know a little bit of backstory about me. I don't know if I've got a huge amount of time to go into the nitty-gritty of it all, but yeah, there's some things have been happening on the side with family. I recently became an uncle, which is a huge was a was a huge benefit to like my sort of psychological framework, I would say, when I held my nephew for the first time. Um, and as like the last sort of, few months sort of drew on, um, it's only gotten like sort of better and it's made me sort of like more inclined to, you know, want to have a child, want to settle down and, sort of build family, continue on, the lineage that, started hundreds and hundreds of years back, from my dad's side, well, both my parents' sides actually. My dad's side's French, my mum's side's Irish. My mum's side original, originally came to Australia as as Northern Irish slaves. Um, they came over as under titles of indentured servants. Um, and then on my dad's side was like a real old lineage of like French aristocrats that ended up setting up shop in Mauritius about 230 years ago, somewhere there. Well and truly before Mauritius was called Mauritius, when it was called Ile-de-France. But, not to trail off, um, yeah, and then, you know, after holding my little nephew Austin, um, yeah, I just want to like continue on that lineage, to be honest. I mean, I've got some things I want to do with myself, but it's definitely something now that I'm pretty confident I want to sort of invest an element of myself into is to be a father. But speaking of fatherhood, um, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about these things, but I heard on the grapevine someone I know I would consider to be a close friend of mine is soon to be a father. Is that the case?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I wish the absolute best. I wish the absolute best for our mutual friend,
Yeah.
who's going to become a father soon.
Yeah. He's
Um,
he's he's gonna be up on the podcast very soon.
oh, fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic. Um, Life's a really interesting one. It seems to be something in recent times in like sort of Western, like the Western system is that this whole thing that's been pushed recently, about abortions and you've seen all these things about like whether people should have children when the world's on fire and all these like crazy things that I've been seeing and I think to myself like is it really worth like people investing their time into like these microcosm subjects when there's so much more to gain from life, from spirituality and just like all of that. But I don't know.
Yeah. So you know why we connected, right? We connected because you're not you're not from my side of the world. You're from a
Correct.
different part of the earth. And however, my basic premise for why I started talking to you and we've had lengthy conversations is that what usually would take me like an hour, suppose, or a couple of hours to explain conceptually to somebody even from Bharat or Asia or somebody who understand polytheistic systems of deities and worshipping, you will get that in a snap. And
Mm,
I thought to myself that this man, this person, he perhaps has no physical reach to my side of the world. However, when I say things to him, um, it's so personal, it's so intimate.
yeah.
It's as if he's what I'm trying to say. He's getting it 1 second before I say that. And I found that very interesting. So, Fozzie, how did that happen? I mean, you belong to one part of the world. I belong to another part of the world. We've had we have had the exchange of some of the most tremendous and terrific ideas, for the lack of word, let me call it that. So
Yep.
how do you find yourself where you are, and why are you like what you are?
I would say I would say up until 2017, I wasn't I wasn't spiritually inclined. I mean, I was baptized Roman Catholic, but I never took the inclinations of like Christian spirituality or the Christian doctrine to any sort of extent where like I had genuine belief in like a higher power. I mean, I guess I thought, for the longest time that like something existed, but at the time of my life, sort of in my young adult years, I was more I was more inclined into, what I would call like, nonsensical things. So like video games, things that sort of like separated me from um, being like more in tune with myself. And then come 2017, what sort of begun my spiritual journey was psychedelics. So I wasn't in a great field of mind at the time. I was quite depressed. I was having suicidal thoughts. I used to bite into my wrists. Like there was a whole host of problems that sort of came with, without getting into like the thick of the weeds. Like, my upbringing, like my parents got separated when I was young. And, my dad fell off the horse and he got onto drugs, this and that. My mum did everything she could to, like raise, two boys, me and my younger brother by herself. But these thoughts sort of came to mind after 2017. But anyway, I took these psychedelics that literally came out of nowhere. I had them given to me in a capsule form from a friend's sister's fiance, and he had heard that I had a conversation with a mate of mine at the time, and he came to my house and he gave them to me and he gave me some instructions. I ended up doing a little bit of reading. I sat on them for maybe about 3 months, and after the first time I had consumed them, I had quite an experience. And I did have multiple experiences sort of post that first time. Um, but what it did for me was it was able to sort of it was able to almost link my mind and my consciousness sort of, and when I say mind and consciousness, like without getting into sort of the weeds of that, like,
Mhm.
my initial thoughts versus something that's a little bit deeper, than the surface. Um, and I started, I guess, I definitely started praying, like I started sort of having deeper thoughts about myself within the world, within the universe. Um, I started doing a little bit of reading here and there, and gosh, the journey from 2017 to like 2022 was an extraordinary one. It came with weight loss, it came with more confidence, it came with me, coming out of my shell, becoming more social. And, every time there was like a positive affluence on this sort of like spiritual journey of mine, I sort of thanked like whatever God was listening, whatever was listening of higher power. And I guess sort of in the periods from 2021 through to 2022, my thoughts on spirituality sort of begun to take form and take shape. And it's funny, I guess I never really thought about like Hinduism until this like, early 2023 period. But I started having these thoughts about like karma, and how like karma seems to be this thing that truly does exist in the universe. And I know to some, like, someone will say like, oh, karma exists. And then, someone will say like, oh, do something good will happen. Do something bad will happen. Like, like very rudimentary understanding of karma. Um, and I sort of played into those thoughts for a while, and those thoughts begun to sort of manifest into like a little bit of like string theory. And you know, something that came along the line through a friend of mine was about synchronicity. And then 2023 came, and I met yourself. I met some others from the Hindu community, and that seemed to resonate with me in a way that all other spiritual inclinations didn't.
Hmm.
And karma obviously is a concept within Hinduism. And as I sort of, had conversations with yourself, primarily with yourself, at least on a much deeper level, as opposed to some of the other guys in the Hindu community, who admittedly I've had absolutely fantastic conversations with. But this like spiritual inclination of mine has formed and has manifested to such a degree that I would consider myself to be some sort of like quasi Christian Hindu, because I believe in Jesus. Like, I
Hmm.
believe Jesus was a real person. But I'm now at a stage in my life, and what I'm about to say, to
And a
like,
good
I
person.
guess, to like the and a good person as
And a
well.
good
So,
person.
uh, thank you, man. And sorry, not thank you to me. Yeah. And Jesus, look, Jesus, at least from the stuff that I've looked at, Jesus was a good person. I definitely hold reservations to the idea that he is God. I definitely hold those reservations. But in recent times, I guess my thoughts on Jesus had changed to such a degree that, like, I believe Jesus like was for like, whether he was Hindu or Buddhist, to me is irrespective. I believe like what Jesus had sort of like preached was like an aspect of like Sanatan Dharma. Um, and I hold that thought like true to myself, like, to this day. And I know to like sort of Christian doctrine that is like heretical. Um,
Hmm.
but there's enough reading material to give me, the idea that he certainly was something other than what is described within Christian doctrine, within Islamic doctrine, and certainly within Judaistic doctrine. Um, and I'm just rolling with it, to be honest, brother. Like, it's doing well for me. I started doing, with the help of yourself, I started doing some, I'm probably going to, I'm probably going to use the wrong terminology right now, but sort of like invoking um, specific deities to, sort of uh, help me along my own spiritual like path. Um, Obviously one that has helped me out significantly in very recent times is Hanuman, with Hanuman Chalisa. So like, thank you to you for that one, man. Like, that has been immensely helpful. Like that, like one of the things, I mean, we could talk about the electronic stuff. We could definitely talk about the electronic stuff, but like one of the things that, we had a discussion about, and something that I had raised to you, was feeling like a negative energy in my presence, feeling a negative energy in the house, sort of feeling like I'm a bit adrift in this environment. And you and me had some long, lengthy discussions about Hanuman and Hanuman Chalisa, and then I started doing it. And within the first time, literally the first time I did it, like there was an immediate change. Um, you know, One of the questions that you had raised to me was I having lights flickering in my house? Was I having like issues with electronics? And I said yes. And it was like shocking, because these things were happening. I was having like random light flickers like around the house wherever I go. Like the lamp would randomly flicker, the internet Wi-Fi would like spontaneously drop out, the Wi-Fi on my phone would drop out, and my earbuds, my little JBL earbuds, like one of them had stopped working for about a month before we had this conversation. It completely conked out, and it was doing my head in, because I'm like, I don't want to have to go and buy a new pair and la 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 la, and there's more money I've got to go and spend. And the next day, after doing Hanuman Chalisa that night, like taking it very seriously, the next morning, that headphone, bro, like it just worked all of a sudden. I was shocked. I was so shocked, man. And after that, I was like, wow, this works. So I kept doing it night after night. I genuinely felt like a change, not just within myself, but also within the aura in the house. I noticed a change within my mum. I noticed a change within my brother. Like my brother has problems, and I noticed he begun to like sort of, and not immediately, and same with my mother, not immediately, but I think the outward energy that I was I was whether I was putting it out or whether Hanuman was putting out, I couldn't tell you. But that energy that was being put out from like this invoking of Hanuman, it genuinely had like a positive sort of impact on the household as a whole. Um, and it's crazy to think that to someone from a Western lens, simply chanting a specific, I, I, I guess I'll just quickly ask you a question because I don't want to butcher it.
Mhm.
Hanuman Chalisa, it's not a mantra. What is the specific terminology that you would call it?
You can say that it is a Sabar mantra. Sabar mantras are, those mantras that are not in the conventional language, say Sanskrit,
Okay.
but they have they're sort of, it's sort of the thing that when you can't give somebody a direct medicine, you will put it in a cake
Yeah.
or in porridge or something like that. So you make a recipe,
Yeah.
right? So that
Yeah.
people who are not able to take that intensity of medicine, it's like lower intensity but more bioavailability in terms of the mantric value. And yeah, that's what Hanuman Chalisa basically is. And there are ways to do Hanuman Chalisa. Like Hanuman Chalisa is for Chalis is 40. Chalisa is a stotram or a verse that is composed of 40, like 40 sentences. So all 40 of them can be used as a specific mantra to do a specific function in Hanuman
Okay.
Chalisa.
Yeah. So, you know, when it comes to, Hanuman Chalisa, as you just mentioned, like this this 40 sentences, I guess like the other term would be like the like 40 verses.
Yes,
Um,
40 verses. Yes.
yeah, like I guess some of the positive, like, I mean, if I was to sort of narrow down like what are some of the things that it had as like a positive influence on me, other than like stopping the lights from flickering and repairing my headphones and fixing the Wi-Fi, I would say,
I knew that
sorry,
I thought Hanuman does a lot of things. First time I discovered that he repairs electronics.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, bro. When we
It is
spoke about it, you
surreal.
were so shocked.
It
It's
is
so real,
surreal.
man. It's so real. It is so real, and it is surreal. Um, I think I think some of the things that it really did sort of have a positive influence on me, I guess from my own self, is it definitely gave me mental strength. I would say it definitely gave me more loyalty towards my family. Like it definitely made me more inclined to, um, in some form. I mean, whether I want to attribute it directly to Hanuman or not is you know another question. But I feel comfortable to say that because like I feel like none of this would have transpired if I hadn't begun doing Hanuman Chalisa.
Mm.
Um, this sort of like feeling of like unwavering loyalty and sort of devotion to my family and making sure that, like everything's okay with my mum and my brother and me, and like the sort of family dynamic that we have had in the past, hadn't been like fantastic, but in very recent times that certainly had shifted. Um, and I mean, if I was to sort of look at the timeline of these things, the only change that had spawned sort of recently in my mind to accommodate that change was Hanuman Chalisa. And as I said before, like I know that to like to the average person through like the Western lens that has been used to either like a, you know, a Christian doctrine or like some, you know, like agnostic atheist sort of framework within like, you know, a Christian slash Western sort of societal makeup, that would be seen as something very strange, very out there. But man, it did wonders. It truly did wonders. And I got to thank you, bro. Like, I truly got to thank you, man.
It's my
Because,
pleasure. If I'm a medium, it's a pleasure. If it came through me, I'm
thank you,
really
bro.
happy about it. It all goes to Hanuman. I'm just a, you know, I'm the road.
Yep.
He is the car.
Yep.
And
But you know,
I'm happy to be the road. See, I know that in fact you're not the only one who's having these issues. I find these issues, these doubts in my peers, who grown up in very traditional families. I have not grown in a very traditional family from the perspective of being very religious. My parents never told me to go compulsorily pray or something. It was just like a regular house, and I've had my set of experiences, but that's for another day, perhaps. That's perhaps
yep.
for your podcast.
Yes, exactly.
But you know what? So we'll get this thing out of the way before we continue the conversation. That I heard this thing from a lot of Christians, and I'm fine with you or you not being a Christian, by the way. That's whatever commensurates with your consciousness and whatever makes you a better person. I think you should go with that. That the devil tempts
100%.
you. Initially, things work
100%.
very. So there's this concept that the devil tempts you, and initially things work for you very well, and then you just get seduced into a way of life that is not. You know what I'm trying to say, right? So, what do you think about
Yep.
that and
Yep.
your experience with, particularly, Hanumanji?
Well, like I mentioned before, like the sort of feeling of having a lot more strength, of like a mental strength. Um, it definitely feels like negative forces, negative energy, whether someone wants to call it Lucifer or the devil or Shaitan or whatever sort of title someone wants to label this like negative energy that certainly in my mind exists in the universe. Um, used to have like, I would say, like quite a strong grip on myself, on my consciousness, on my psychological state, and also on the environment that I live in now, but at the time was certainly a different environment. Um, but I can definitely say for certain that after doing Hanuman Chalisa, and not just from the first moment, but the
Hmm.
continuation till this day has just given me more and more strength and resolve to continue moving forward with this journey of mine. And now it almost feels like no negative force can hold me back from pushing forward.
Hmm.
It still it still dawns on me where I'll get these like random fleeting thoughts about like, oh, if I tackle X, Y, and Z, what are the negative aspect, like what are the negative influences going to be, instead of me thinking about the positive. And I think now for me that's more habitual as opposed to like literal. So once upon a time, it was literal,
Mm-hmm.
where like, yeah, there was things that I was doing, or there was like negative forces at play to sort of like slow me down, or like, encumber me. So I sort of became incredibly stagnant, didn't move anywhere psychologically, didn't move anywhere physically, didn't move anywhere financially, and like a whole host of things. But now it feels like those forces, whatever they might be, has like almost like dissipated, for lack of a better term, from myself and from the environment that I live in. Um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. So when we were speaking, and I'm always a bit conservative to tell anything to anyone, because it's just that I don't know people. And whenever you interfere with things, I know for a fact, and I think I've shared enough evidence with you that there's a karmic consequence, right? So when I was speaking to
Oh
you,
fuck yeah.
um, so, and I am no, I don't have clairvoyance or any of that, like, Shakti or something like that. When I was speaking to you, I realized that, you came across as a very genuine person. And then when you started describing what has been happening to you, I'm a village guy. I'm I'm born and brought up in a village. We don't, shrug, but the kind of things, if somebody from my village would tell me, we won't shrug it off, because we are exposed to people having these kind of issues, and then, the resolutions of the same, they are part of the culture. Unfortunately, it's categorized as superstition or something, like that, vis-a-vis, modern education. But when I started asking you questions, with deductive reasoning, and I was sitting, and I had a tickle once, and I thought that, yeah, there is something, that's which doesn't want us to have that conversation, right? I saw something, um, and in fact, when it's like you are developing some kind of an ability, or you have some ability,
Yep.
but until and unless you don't go out there and do the application of that. And this by no mean I want to say that, I have uh, some vision or third eye opening or chakra and all those. I don't want to get into that. But
Yep.
I had some thoughts, and I had some doubts, and I had a gut feel, and I wanted to. When you started telling me things, I started asking you questions. The answers that you gave me led me to a pattern, and then I realized, and when we had that session of cross questioning, I realized that, there is something amiss here. And whatever I knew, with respect to dealing with it, I told you, and I'm very, very thankful to the universe that it worked for you. And
Thank you, brother.
yeah,
I,
I'm extremely happy,
yeah,
because it, it's it's I like to be useful. I have very simple principles. I like to be useful, and I'm glad that, you're in a better state of being than when we started having our conversation. And I've seen that progress. I've seen that progress happening, and I'm really glad at the way it is happening. And you've had hiccups,
thank
and
you,
you've
man.
been very brave at your personal end in dealing with all those things. And uh, is that you're finding strength to help your family, to support your loved ones. That's excellent. And I think that's part of being a man or a human being, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So if it's
Absolutely.
it's making you a better human being, go for it. Go for it.
You have to, man. Like, what else are you gonna do? Like, what are you just gonna look, I look over my life and I think to myself sometimes, I think to myself sometimes, like, God, I wasted so much time doing this and that, like, you know, like just investing like pointless amounts of myself into like video games and nonsensical crap. But at the end of the day, these things had to happen in order for me to be where I am right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that like a lot of people globally, irrespective of, creed or color, I feel like that is something that a lot of people seem to forget. Like I understand how easy it is. Well, I understand how easy it is for some people to live in the moment, and I also understand how easy it is for some people to live in the past. But I think one of the things that people need to really sort of look at instead is like the choices that people have made have led them to the moment that they are in now, and what they can do to make sure that if they have lived a life of disarray and disrepair and have come to a point in their life where they are beginning to identify these problems within themselves, within the environment they live in, as something of beauty, because you have to see where you came from in order for you to see where you're going. I think that that ideal of identifying yourself within the world, like the immediate world you live in. So like that's, the environment you live in, with your
Mm-hmm.
family or with your, your spouse or whoever. But also sort of seeing where you would like to see yourself in the future, almost as like a vision, and being able to sort of put out enough good energy to sort of inhibit good karma to be able to continue moving forward. Because if you just do, and I've been guilty of this in the past, if you just do wrong by everyone, and when I say wrong, it doesn't mean need to be like, something grandeur. It doesn't need to be like, like I beat someone up or I stole someone's money or stuff like that. It could be something as simple as like, you know, back talking to your spouse, like, treating your spouse or your mother or your family members like pieces of crap, because you've got your own problems going on. All that's going to do is just keep inhibiting negative karma. And I think in order to sort of move into a new light, move into like a new place of like peaceful resolution, you definitely have to identify where you are in the world. And what I mean by that obviously is like your own world. Um, but I genuinely believe, and I know it's like a rudimentary sort of, going back to what I said earlier about this rudimentary concept of karma for like, the sort of average layman person, is you definitely get a benefit of being good, not just to yourself, but also to the world around you. You definitely do. And whilst the effects may not present themselves
Mm-hmm.
immediately, they definitely begin to present themselves very quickly if you keep that momentum going. And sometimes that momentum hits walls. Like I know I've said to you before, like we've talked about, like, how I've had this feeling of like, like you're moving up a mountain, like, you're walking up a hill. And as you keep moving up that hill, you can either run up that hill or you can like pace yourself up that hill. But irrespective of how fast or how slow you go, you're always going to come across roadblocks. I've described them as boulders and whatnot. Hello. um, But I think as long as you keep that momentum and as long as you keep a positive sort of a positive feeling that, the direction you're going is the right one, and you're treating people well, and, you're doing right by your family, you're doing right by your friends, you're doing right by your loved ones, then that is going to like, then something in the universe is going to pay attention to that and is going to give like rewards. But those
Yeah.
rewards, they might not present themselves as financial immediately. They might not present themselves as emotional immediately, but these rewards will begin to present themselves very quickly as long as you keep that momentum. That would be my response. I'm sorry I really expanded upon that, but as
Nah, no,
is.
no problem. Well, we have all the time. We believe in rebirth and next birth and the birth after that.
That's it. That's it. And that's another one, bro. That's a really interesting one, man. Like the concept of rebirth, like I genuinely
So
believe it
so
now.
so
I
so be-
genuinely
so
believe in it.
before you take off on that,
Mm,
if you have a conception of karma without a
yep.
conception, without the masala of rebirth, you're gonna get fucked.
Do you want to expand upon that?
Yes.
Please
because
go.
because the way, so you are reading a book, right? You started reading a book that just got delivered.
Yes.
And the third book is called Karma,
Yep.
right? So
I can't wait.
so I just started it last night,
Yep.
and
I
it's
didn't realize
it's
you finished the second book.
yeah.
You powered through that second book.
Yeah, I powered through the second book like 2 days on the flight, in
Fuck.
in the car, 2 days done. The thing is that you have a conception of karma that it's the like the third law of Newton. right?
Yep.
Equal reaction is equal opposite action is equal opposite
Correct.
reaction. But the effect of that reaction you might get in your next birth. So you can be searching for the result of those things that you've done in this birth, and you're trying to understand that why are things happening to me in this birth. I haven't done anything
Yep.
in this birth, but those consequences might be coming from like series of past births, and you're repeating the same
Yep.
patterns because they are so your subconscious is so engrossed in it, right? So what
Yep.
a lot of my our Western friends, they get screwed on this karma theory, and then they just basically throw it out of the window at some point of time, is
Yep.
because with see this thought process, this philosophical web has different elements, and there are some things that exist within systems. There are systems within systems, there are concepts within concept. So what people generally end up doing is that they will tell you, you have this karma, you do this, and this is the remedy. it, you think the maker will make something this it's much a bit more complicated. This world is a bit more complicated than a video game, right?
Yes, certainly
You
is.
complete a mission, you
Certainly
get
is.
respect points, you get HP. You don't complete the mission,
Oh
you lose
yeah.
some money, and then you die, and then you can respawn again. It's not he's not that stupid.
It's funny how like the most popular video games always like revolve around this idea of, like, oh, will you die? And then you just, start back at the last checkpoint and like continue on. And it's like, we had spoken one night about this, like we'd spoken about, like your, ancestors and, the next, whether you want to call them ancestors or not, but this idea of like, reincarnation of like, your previous self or previous selves in like previous lives have done, it could have been like unquestionable acts of negativity. It could have been like, elements of positivity, irrespective. Like those actions and consequences have bled into the new life. And when we spoke about this concept or these concepts within concepts and this like follow through of these like these like I don't know what would be a word to describe it, but like the flow of karma from one life into another. Like it blew my mind when we had these conversations, and I thought to myself, like, it probably could be the case. Like I would not be surprised knowing, at least from my dad's side, and sort of the reactions, or sorry, the consequences to actions that have been from my ancestors that I've looked into, and then sort of seeing how those actions have almost had an impact into the following generations, including my grandfather and then my father and now me. Now, obviously saying that my father and my grandfather are me, but I feel that energy does indeed transfer across in some form.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, like we definitely know, at least from the conception of life, like you're not, in my mind, like, and I know from like a Western scientific perspective, oh, you're just passing down like genetic code, like that's it, like there's nothing else being passed down.
But
Well,
even
am
in that, even if you take that logic, right, you take those 23 chromosomes together, you are
yeah,
you are a living ancestor,
correct.
right? You might have the
So why
nose.
is it out of the
uh,
realm?
yeah,
Sorry,
so
go.
you as Sadhguru has said once that you might be carrying the nose of somebody who's born in your family like 8 generations ago, your great grandfather. There might be one trait that must have been passed to you, and you think it's only the physical trait and not and not the psychological trait,
Yeah,
right? So
I know now that that's bullshit, and I'm saying that bluntly. Like I genuinely believe that that is nonsensical to the degree that it's only just like genetic code that's passed and it's not anything else other than that. And I think to myself, like, you you definitely take on, I mean, like, think about it like this, yeah. Your parents, irrespective of whether they are together and one parent, like, this is obviously very common in the Western world, is like, at least today, is high divorce rates and stuff, but separate that. Your parents take on the emotional, and I would go as far to say the spiritual burden. And I say burden, but I say it with positivity as opposed to negativity, but it's the only sort of term I can use right now. Takes on the burden of now, like, raising a child or multiple children.
Mm.
And then as they get older, you as the child begin to develop this idea of almost taking on the burden of paying that back, of sort of paying back this 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 sort of, how would I describe it? God, like, the word begets me now, but it's this idea of, as I said, taking on the burden of your parents and putting it back to this positive burden, and putting it back to making sure that they are comfortable, so that you can then continue moving forward and bring your
Mm.
own next generation into the
Mm.
world. And I think that that idea is something that, at least in the Western framework, like, begets a lot of people in modern society. Um, like, you hear about people like, oh, I hate my parents, la 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 la. Like, me personally, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about my father, but of the positive things that I will say is that he brought me into this world. And irrespective of his actions and consequences, like, till this day, if he never met my mum and that did not bring me into this world, well, then what the fuck? I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this conversation. Like, I still believe that all these things happen for a reason. I cannot like sit idly and think to myself, the universe and everything that happens within it is just purely random and chaotic. Like, and I think that, you know, it's easy enough for someone who's like some staunch atheist to just go like, whatever, like, this is just all random and chaotic. There cannot be like anything of like higher divine power. There cannot be any idea of reincarnation. There cannot be this idea that, these spiritual aspects and this negative and positive karma are having an outflow approach into the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. But I'm sorry, man, like, yeah, I can't put it into a scientific method for you, but
I mean
at the same
but
time,
that's a limitation of the scientific method and not reality,
correct. Yep,
right?
that's correct.
That's the limitation of the scientific method. If the scientific method is contingent on five senses, then
Mm.
you know,
You're only going to work within the five senses.
yeah. So, and also, even if you don't owe anything to your father, you're still connected, right? You have
100%.
right half of your genetic makeup, like um, conceptually speaking, came from him.
Yep,
So even if you say
absolutely.
that you don't have like a good you don't have a good vibe together, but there are things that you will have to correct in yourself that came from him, or
Absolutely.
there are
Absolutely, bro.
or there would be things that uh, that you're good at that came from him.
Yep.
So in that
Oh yeah,
way,
my charm and my handsome good looks definitely came from him.
yeah, there you go, you just got started, right?
It's an
the,
interesting one, man. Like, just, yeah. Anyway, sorry, continue.
the world is a the world gets interesting uh, depending on how you observe it and what the amount of curiosity and sincere curiosity that you have. Uh, if you want to stick to scientific method, then there is a whole lot of things that science does not explain. For example, one thing that we see all the time, pregnant women, they have nausea. There is no scientific explanation of that as yet. There is no cogent scientific explanation for something that you observe on a regular basis.
Yep.
There is an explanation in the Garuda Puran, by the way.
Oh,
Yes. and the Garbha Puran.
Oh,
Sorry, not the Garuda Puran, but the Garbha Puran, the Garbha Upanishad. There is an explanation,
and
but
w- can you give like a sort of
I'll tell you what
give an
I've heard. Yeah,
explanation?
I've been through it vicariously because of the
Yep.
friend. We started discussing the Garbha Upanishad and whatever it is called, and it is basically the aversions and the likes of the child that is being carried in the womb get reflected on the mother. And at that point of stage, there's a lot of to and fro going on between the mother and the child in the womb. In fact, it is known that during pregnancy, the child, not only that the mother gives her child nutrition, the child also repairs the mother's body because it has bone marrow, and those that pristine genetic material. So a lot of women who are going through thyroid, liver damage, kidney damage, uh, sickle cells, neurological disorders, women start to glow when they're pregnant, right?
They do.
Yeah, their body is getting repaired. So
Okay, it's like an exchange of energy and like an exchange of energy, of life
right,
force, of nutrients, obviously.
yeah,
Fuck. And there's a concept within Hinduism that describes this.
that basically describes why that nausea happens, and
Wow,
it also delves into when the soul comes in, how the soul selects the body, and things like that.
dead set.
Yeah, and it's very much tied to the karma. So basically, it is said that and this is in the Garuda Puran, that you choose the body with which you will find uh, velocity. In your soul or your Atman will find direction towards the deity, towards the unison with the deities, the Shiva or Shakti, or whatever conceptual you think of. And according to your previous karmas and how you deal with it, the Atman chooses the womb.
That's so with
So
the
you
Atman,
you so you chose to be born in this family, conceptually speaking.
that's see for someone for someone that's been like for myself, and I could definitely speak. uh, Well, I can't speak on behalf of the entire Western community, but I can at least say that like that idea, that like conceptually speaking, you choose the next life that you invest your well, as being the soul, like choosing the next life you sort of invest yourself into, like that is, I guess, to the Western sort of mindset, something that would be seen as so outlandish that it couldn't that there's no I'm serious, like
Yeah, yeah, I
obviously
understand.
me obviously I'm of a different sort of I'm of a different kettle of fish, because as I've like begun to sort of like divulge an element of myself into Hinduism, and begin to sort of understand, like, you know at least very broadly, but begun to understand it in a different frame of mind and a different mindset. Like I can like, appreciate these concepts that clearly have existed for thousands of years, well and truly before Christianity even came into being. Let's be completely honest with you. But the fact that there is these concepts within a spiritual framework that is arguably like the oldest on the planet, it baffles me that there isn't more Westerners like looking to a different approach and a different idea of spiritual being. And
Mhm.
I get the sort of I get the sort of idea of being entrenched within a specific doctrine. Like I really do. But I don't think it's ideal to put yourself into a specific spiritual doctrine that that essentially it almost doesn't give you the tools to sort of improve your own spiritual like
Mm-hmm.
well-being. It sort of just like gives you the rules, and it's just like these are the rules. If you follow them, like all will be fine. It doesn't teach you like how to improve your own spirituality. Like if you look at like if you look at like the Roman Catholic like church, for example, according to like Roman Catholic doctrine, the only way to like reach heaven is by utilizing the church as a vehicle, which is counter counterproductive to like what Jesus had said about the kingdom of God is within yourself. Like, which is a bit of an odd one from that perspective, but not to the Jesus saying, this kingdom of God is within yourself, but like for the Roman Catholic doctrine to like basically outline that as like, well, that's the only way that you can reach heaven. You have to use the church as an actual physical vehicle in order to reach like heaven. And I think to myself, like, you know, how can a lot of people just stand and not stand by like it's a bad thing, but like how can a lot of people just take it at face value and be like, you know what? Yeah. Like humans don't like being told one thing without wanting to do the opposite. You tell a child no, they're going to try and do everything they can to make it a yes. You put up a wall somewhere and say you can't go, or you close a door and you say no entry, you can't go in there. Well, someone is going to be like an inquisitive person and want to know what the fuck's behind that door. And that idea of this like Sanatan Dharma seems to have such an array of concepts and tools in order for you to become more spiritually inclined to such a degree that it genuinely improves like not just the well-being of yourself but the people around you. And I think like I mean, look, I've had conversations with some Christians. Like sort of my time with the Hindu community has been like a beautiful one that I look forward to investing a whole other aspect of myself into when I come to Bharat. And I think to myself, sorry, not I think to myself, but the conversations that I've had with some Christians about some of these like deeper spiritual concepts. Some of them get it, but then
Mm.
some of them don't get it. And that's fine, but at least like having the conversation about something that is deeper than like a surface level of a spiritual doctrine that just like puts rules in place as opposed to giving you the tools is not something that I think is great for themselves or the soul. I think the
Mm.
soul is something that always yearns, and that yearning cannot be satiated without the tools in place to do so. That's what I'll say on that.
So I have this rule of thumb that if somebody says that um, my way is the only way, and for specific action there is a specific reward, it's suspect. It's always suspect because
Absolutely.
it's and this just doesn't only apply to the monotheistic two faiths, the two or three Abrahamic faiths. It applies to certain sections within Hinduism because they too have those kind of um, concepts where they put a toll gate over spirituality and then they extract revenue out of it,
Yeah.
right? So this is this is my gripe as well, that there are these groups within our system as well who try to put a toll gate or a collection center over spirituality, and they only try to tell you that this is the only way. And I think that is one thing that is different and unique in Sanatan, because uh, you choose a path, or you give, sometimes you choose a path or you're given a path. Many a times it's providence, many a times it is somebody you meet and they bless you, right? Like a guru or an elder. Like I've had fabulous friends who, when I was in trouble, like real karmic trouble, they went out of their way to get things um, get things right for me, and I'm indebted to them for life.
Yeah.
I've had a friend who saw things happening to me in a dream. And then he came and
Yeah,
told
you
me that
you and me both.
and then he came and told me that this is what I saw. I was like, okay, did the person look like that? And he was freaked out. He, he was out of his wits.
Uh,
Uh,
dude, I can't begin to like express how crazy some of these I don't even know what to describe them as, bro. Like these, you know, dreams. You know what another thing has happened actually, like funnily as we're like going into this specific subject, I noticed after doing Hanuman Chalisa, my dream state became way more vivid, way more intense. Intense to the point that, like,
mhm.
look, I think I can comfortably say this now. Like it's only you and me have like sort of discussed this. But I feel like maybe it's the right time. I'm getting a sort of positive feeling to sort of express this, but you know, we had this discussion that this one night, I hit this state of like dreaming where I was like drifting between like when I was about to fall asleep and when I like did fall asleep. But in the sort of motions of this, I had this almost what I would describe as what would I call it? It felt like the onset when this event had happened. It felt like the onset of a night terror. Now, I've have had night terrors in the past, and when I've had night terrors in the past, it has been something where like my body has gone into almost like sleep paralysis. And in the past, when I've had night terrors, obviously the key word being terror has never been these dreams of like positivity. It's always been negative. These things have been quite vivid in their own regard. But this time when I had this, and it's been many months since this event occurred, I started to see almost like it was like a golden head, and it had come to me, and it came to me in such a way where it began to like pulse back and forth in my mind, and it was something that I had never experienced before. And it felt like, I'm getting chills just like trying to describe it, but it felt like love. Like it felt like this pure, unadulterated love. And I just had this feeling of awe and this feeling of pure positivity that like everything is going to be okay. And the next morning, man, like was fucking wild. And when we spoke about it, you know, and mind you, it wasn't just like a head, like this head had a crown. And I remember I tried to describe this crown to you, and it was like this multi-tiered crown that came up um, almost like some sort of like step pyramid. And when we spoke about it, I remember you were just shocked, and you had said to me, like, Krishna, like I had seen like Krishna. And I couldn't believe it until you had like shown me a photo that you had in your house, and this photo had an image of not just the last or the most recent form of Krishna, but also had all these previous avatars that almost had like this echoing effect that like bellowed behind him. And that was the effect that I was trying to draw upon with you, with like this pulsating was coming back and forth. Like it felt so surreal. And I didn't know what to make of it, but it has stuck with me till this day, man. And it is giving that specific event that unfolded has given me such a drive in my spiritual in like my spiritual journey, to such a degree, that I've done something that I never thought I would ever do. and it's definitely something that has always been outside of my comfort zone, is like, I'm going to parties, getting these like motions moving to such a degree, like, yeah, the, if I'm dreaming of a deity that is of a Hindu framework, clearly clearly my mind, not my mind, clearly my consciousness is pulling me in that direction, and it can only pull me so far from this land.
And nothing that you've
So
seen before.
nothing that I've seen before, bro. Like,
Right.
I've tripped my balls off on psychedelics, and I have never experienced something like that before. I have seen geometric patterns, I have seen colors, I've seen walls fucking bleed, but I have never experienced something like that that has had such a such a flow of emotion and such a flow of positivity to such a degree that it is almost like almost like it's almost like it strapped a rocket to my ass and just shot me forward in terms of like wanting to move this aspect of my spiritual well-being. I swear, dude,
Yeah.
it has been like such a journey for me, man. And like, I know I'm still here, I know like I'm not in Pardas right now, but I feel like my soul, and I say I feel like I know my soul is yearning for Pardas, and conversations I've obviously had, not just with you, conversations I've had with other people about, like going to Pardas. One of the funny things is just like, keep an open mind, keep an open mind. Like, bro, you got no fucking idea how open my mind is. Like, please.
Guy's got who's got a rocket up his ass.
Oh, exactly, dude. Exactly.
Yeah, he definitely has an open mind.
And I've got to get, honestly, bro, I got to thank you, man. I truly have to thank you, bro. Like, I'm saying this from my purest self. Like, even though we haven't physically connected just yet, like, I feel like I really fucking love you, man. You have given me so
We'll keep
much.
it kosher.
We'll keep it kosher, but it's not that kind of love. But man, it's just been like, oh, what a
I'm happy.
journey.
I'm just happy.
What a treat.
I'm just happy I could help. I'm just happy I could help. It's
Well,
so it is providence because that day I was sitting I do sadhana in this very room, right? I was sitting
yeah,
and I just had a thought that talk to Fuzzy, talk to Fuzzy, talk to Fuzzy, talk to Fuzzy.
yeah.
And I was like, and I put out a tweet, right? And it is for you. And I thought that, see, I don't want to interfere in all this business because I've seen, shit hitting the fan all the time when I try to interfere with people's life. And so I thought that I'll put it out. If he deserves it, he'll get it. But then you told me this story of your, this freakish experience, and you having the vision of a face with a crown and all that. When you're describing it to me, it is Krishna which is just sitting right in front of me. So I was here,
That's it.
and Krishna was like here,
Looking straight at it.
right? So my eyes were wide open, and I was like, "Did you see this?" And you said, "Yes, I saw this." I was like, "Oh my god!" Ah, this is a signal, and I should act because for a lot of people, uh, and this goes out to whoever wants to, uh, whoever feeds for it. I think Hindus have become very karmic in nature, that that um, they give more importance to karma, and they don't give importance to dharma as much. There's a conflation between karma and dharma. Dharma is a central tenet of Hinduism, of Sanatan. In fact, of being human, it is the central tenet of being human. And I believe that being a Hindu is hard because you have to be dharmic. You have to be good. You just can't, go to war and get some virgins for yourself or convert into you can't just rise back yourself out of the system.
Yeah.
If it offends somebody, be my guest. but I really, I mean, I try to give myself, the minimum, expose myself the minimum. But I think when there's a calling, go for it,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
Because if you don't go for it, then there is no, there is no dharmic spine in you. You don't have
Yep,
courage. You don't have bravery. You're not a fighter,
yep,
right?
absolutely.
And what will God do with people who have no principles and virtues?
Yep,
What will he do with them? Maximum, he'll make them clean his toilet if he takes a dump,
yep,
or some shitty thing. I mean, be deserving to the God that you look up to.
yep,
I mean,
100%.
if the minimum that you can do is, you should find, the God should find in you an appropriate, not appropriate really, but this thought is coming to me right now. Your God should be proud of you for creating you,
Yep,
minimum. And if you're
100%.
not doing that, if you think that, my morning little ritual, my little cup of tea that I make so nicely, singing bhajans and all, and the offerings that I to give to the Almighty, that will just take me through this world.
Yeah.
You think God is an idiot?
Um, I think
You think Kali or Tara, she's an idiot? That you get
well, I can't
that
speak on behalf of the entire Hindu community with
No,
that.
no,
I
no, no,
can't
no.
like
I will speak about it, no, because I'm there.
okay.
So I have the license to kill. So you so you think you'll offer laddus to Mahakali and she'll fall for that trap, and she'll get you past your karmas? A lot of people promote that, and I'm sorry. If that is the will of the God, that God doesn't deserve me.
Yep,
I'll go to a better God. Period.
yep, yep.
So yeah,
It's funny
that's
how
that's my, the radical and extremist, um, quote unquote Hindutva terror me.
you know it's funny, yeah. You know, it's funny, like, I guess I'm just sort of having a sort of more extensive thought on some previous thoughts of mine about, this sort of journey of myself, sort of post doing Hanuman Chalisa. And how I mentioned like I felt like it gave me strength.
Hmm.
W- I guess one of the things it did, it I believe it definitely gave me almost like um almost like a dharmic framework in such, or it applied something to my existing framework in such a way where I felt like I had to take on more duty, like sort of um like more like moral obligation to myself and to my
Hmm.
family, like
Hmm.
more, definitely more responsibility to making sure that there is like this healthy positive outflow cohesion, um
Mm.
which I believe, like, I mean, I guess that all sort of falls into like, sort of morals and like moral and ethical principles, I would say. And I mean, that in itself is like, that's something that's like heavily focused on from my understanding when it comes to like dharma. Obviously, karma being separate from that, but like this idea of taking on responsibility, taking on like moral obligation to do right by yourself and to do right by the people around you. And that itself, look, I mean, my thoughts, and I guess these are sort of evolving in real time. Those thoughts of mine of having this sort of like dharmic framework of responsibility, of moral and ethical like obligation to yourself and to the, to the people, to your loved ones, to your friends, um, leads into karma. And that itself is going to like almost, and if it's done in a positive manner, is going to fuel that, is going to like that consequence that comes back, that positive consequence is going to have like a really strong bonding to your existing, like, your existing, or your developing dharmic framework. And I feel that as long as, like I mentioned before, as long as you keep that momentum, as long as you keep that positive outflow, and you stick by, you stand true to your moral and ethical obligations to yourself and to your family, I genuinely feel that like your life will improve. I mean, you and me have discussed about the improvements on those notes. Like my life has improved. Your life, we're obviously not going into like, the nitty and gritty of our pasts, but identifying those past issues and building upon them now with this different frame of mind has had like a positive influence on each of us. And
Mhm.
we've both seen the rewards of that. And whilst these are only like, on face value to like, anyone that listens in, or to, to the average person that might be like, they might think they're well seasoned in like dharma, they might think they're well seasoned in karma, or they might just be discovering it for the first time. It works. It
Oh,
absolutely
it works.
works.
It works.
It works, man. And it's crazy to think that for such an old spirit, for such a spiritual framework to be arguably the oldest on the planet, it baffles my mind that this thing, you know hasn't, well, I can't say it hasn't graced the Western world. I feel like it's funny. I remember seeing a video the other day, and I can't even remember the gentleman's name. He was a Hindu gentleman. It was on Instagram. I did save the video, so I'll send it to you when I'm going to go through and I'll send it to you. But he described that dharma and karma have left Bharat, and it has traversed across the world, and it is beginning to like take form. Oh God, I'm getting a little emotional as I say this for some fucking reason. It's beginning to manifest and take form in the Western world when it needs it like now more than ever. And it's going to like grab it and bring it back towards Bharat. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting really emotional as I say this, but um yeah, it's just, not to get carried away on that specific thing, but it's had a massive positive influence on me, and even my mum has noticed it, dude. Like my family members, my friends have noticed it, and like I didn't notice it upon myself initially, other than, you know, the light stopped flickering and the headphones like work again. But like, but now I'm seeing it, like I've seen it manifest itself in such a way that I'm looking upon myself and upon the world in such a different light. And it's fucking beautiful, man. It's so beautiful, dude. And I just, if anyone, like I mentioned, if anyone's listening, man, like, just keep at it. If you're discovering it for the first time, ask, go to a mandir,
Mm.
like speak to someone, like, find a guru, find a spiritual like teacher, man, that like has an inclination towards these things, and just try to learn, man. Just keep at it. And I'm telling you, like the the rewards that it provides aren't necessarily financial, but the rewards that it provides from a spiritual and a moral and an ethical perspective are endless.
Mm.
And man, yeah, fuck.
S-
Sorry, I'm
So
just going through the motions.
I'll give you a breather.
All right.
Yeah. See, my thoughts on this are that there is a bit of a complication with this system, which is it doesn't have standardizations. And I think that's part of the process. You have to become a bit sharp to progress in this system. That requires you to have certain principles and check mechanisms for the guru or whoever you are talking to. Even if you're talking to me, uh, be very ruthless in assessing me. Whatever I tell you, be extremely ruthless because there, because there are no standards. Quite a lot of there's quite a lot in terms of possibility that things can go haywire, and there are stupid things that do happen in this system. So my my rule of thumb is that anybody who asks for money or material benefits from you, uh-uh, just stay off. Because if the guru can't love you like a mother, and mother is giving, right? Nothing less will work.
Yeah.
Just keep the search, be sincere to yourself then until you find that kind of a person. if they're being manipulative and they are seeking material benefits from you, they're asking you to fund this, fund that, etc., 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 doesn't talk to the point. I mean, in any business dealing, how you will do the due diligence, right? Multiply that by 100,
Yep.
and that should be your that should be the level of your scrutiny for any sampradaya, guru, system, any kind of meditation. And also, at the end of the day, what might work for me will might not work for you. So you have to figure out your individual cut,
Yep.
right? And this confusion is also part of the process, because you have to swim through this. There's no way, no way out. That nobody is going to give it to you on a silver platter, and money won't buy it. Maximum issues happen, especially with a lot of our Western friends, is that they have this thing that if they pay, and it's certain. I think I haven't traveled to the West a lot, but I think they have this concept in their mind that if you pay well, and the quality of the thing would be higher. It's
That's
almost
true.
yeah, it's almost inverse in this case.
Mm,
The good guy is not looking for anything else. He is just
yep.
he wants to get out of this world. Why will he even think about materialism?
Yeah.
Right? Somebody who's reached that level, he's trying to be in unison, in a monist, in unity with the deity. What will he do with fine dine and a nice hotel, suite, and a nice car? Those things might be incidental.
Mm,
That's a different thing. But
yep.
most good gurus, they, and that's why the good ascetics in this country, in this part of the world, for most Asian cultures, they give up everything. They 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 wear loincloths and roam around the world, because it's the bar, because it is understood that the more you have your physical body, the clothes and everything that you wear, you start identifying with them.
That's the yeah, there's a term that that I'm going to use, and it applies to a lot of Westerners. Hoarders. You know what the term hoarders means?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, I've
What
met
is
a lot of hoarders in my time, and one of the most common things that I see across all hoarders, irrespective of their color, is that they hold on to material objects because it has some onset emotional value from a memory, as opposed to having having this value of spiritual inclination. And not to say there aren't certain objects, obviously not to say there aren't certain objects that you hold on to that do have a positive influence on like your spiritual morale. But like, you mentioned like cars, hotel suites, this and that. Well, I'm not bringing my C63 AMG into the next life. I'm not bringing that expensive hotel that I, paid $1,000 a night for into the next life, you know. But if I have, let's say, for example, it's funny, like, how like some people will be buried with like certain objects, and this happens in all cultures, in all religions.
Hmm.
It happens in Christianity, it happens in Judaism, it happens in Islam, and it happens in Hinduism and any of the others, Zoroastrianism. People are buried with very specific objects that are that are there to carry them into, I get the blanket over term for for some you know spiritual frameworks is to bring these things with them for the journey into the afterlife.
Hmm.
But I honestly believe that some of these like mementos, or some of these like objects that some that some people are buried with, or you would hope that most people are buried with, would allow them to essentially use those objects as almost like as a, maybe like not so much a memory, but maybe as like a journal of that life that they have lived, and allow them
Mm.
to, how we talked about, like, your soul like selects the next life. Maybe those objects that you bring forward into the afterlife are such that you need to experience something new that is separate from that. And yeah, I don't know, like, it's just a developing thought. Maybe in time, like, I'll sort of like
We,
flush that out more.
I
But
think we'll discuss rituals, especially burial rituals. We'll have a piece,
yeah,
right?
yeah, mad.
The last thing, and we are towards the end of our conversation. There's a story about Krishna, that Krishna's wife. Uh, so there's this concept of kings, and Indra, the lord of, is very near to the concept of Thor, right? He's the lord of thunder and rain, and
Yeah,
gives fertility to the soil. So, so you have king. Over the king, you have the emperor. Over the emperor, you have the concept of Chakravarti, the emperor of everything. And over Chakravarti, you have the concept of Indra, right? Indra basically takes care. He's the king of this world,
yeah.
and
Okay,
there
so of like
and
the physical world.
the physical, the material, immaterial, all things that happen on Earth.
Yeah,
It's the power of Indra behind it, right?
yeah,
Then, just conceptually speaking, right now, not
correct.
going into the nitty gritties. Now, the story about Krishna is that there was a male ant trying to seduce a female ant, and Krishna was looking at that ant very, very intensely, and so his wife asked him, "What's up? Why are you looking at ants? You Krishna." So he said, "This crackhead. He's been in this male guy. He's been this male ant. He's been Indra in 14 previous lives. 14 previous lives he's been Indra, and look at him. This is one thing that screws him over. He gets back to an insect stage, goes all the way to Indra, does something stupid, comes back. This has happened for the 14th time with him. This guy is still in his gross temptations. This is something about karma, right?
Yeah,
It's not that you only move forward, but you also get backward,
yeah.
right? So
Yeah, it's funny, like like over the years, you've heard people like, especially in the when, it's funny, any time, and this is obviously prior to 2023, and I'd probably say like this definitely goes back, into sort of like, the mid 2010s, and carry forward, is there has been like a couple of times where like Hinduism has been like briefly brought up in like some aspect of a conversation that hasn't been around Hinduism. But the one thing is like, yeah, I'm going to come back as like a butterfly or something like that. You know, and now I think about it, it's like, yeah, like, if you live a life of absolute negativity, if you live a life where you just like put out so much negative karma that you're having a bad, you're essentially like causing others to have like these bad experiences from, the energy you're putting out. Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe sometimes you should come back as an ant. Maybe sometimes you should come back as a slug and like live that whole life just so that like you can learn the lesson of your previous life. Like, maybe, because it's, yeah, it's Sanatan Dharma. Fuck, man. More people should really take a good hard look at it, and really maybe not under a microscope to look at an ant, but they should definitely be looking at it from a deeper perspective than like what could be seen on like face value. Like, at least from the Western lens, like, oh, it's just polytheism, like, oh, they got 100,000 gods, 100,000 deities, la 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 la. Like, they're all
Devil,
like cop out. Yeah, they're all
devil
like cop out
worshippers.
arguments. Yeah, devil worshippers is another one. It's like, dude, I've had devil worshippers. I got a friend of mine, and like, we've had like his name's Claude, and we've had like a couple of like heated interactions over this. He's like, that like it's all just devil worship, and I'm like, all right, bro. Like, look, I'm not the guy to explain it to you because it has had a positive influence on me, and you've
Mm.
noticed the positive influence on me. But for you to like then go and say it's devil worship, like it's a bit counterproductive, yeah? Like I get it, you don't know, but like come on.
um, yeah, see, I always, I always understand that there is a good thing. It should do good. It should
Yep.
make people's life better. If it isn't, no matter what the system is, if it's making their life terrible, or not just life in a material sense, but if they're coming out as stronger and better beings, and your life could be shit, and you trying to be, you trying to become stronger can really wreak havoc on your psyche, because sometimes you just need to lay low. But but if you get up and fight, things might not turn out in your way, in the at least the way you want them to be. But I think we choose between dharma and adharma, right, all the time.
Absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
that's a good way to end this one. And
I was literally thinking exactly the same thing.
yeah. So
It's been a
today's
pleasure, man.
always my friend. Today's I think a Chaturthi for Ganesha. It's his day,
Oh,
and
well,
he's the Lord of Good Beginnings. So that's why I wanted to start today.
4 times. Just real quick, I guess this isn't going to be the last thing, but like we'll just, wrap it up after this. So you had sent me what's the term used? Sad mantra, like
Sabar.
verse, Sabha mantra
Mm.
of it's called Gun Gunup Ganapti. Oh gosh, I need to bring it up.
Ganesh Raksha Sutram.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And because we had a discussion about my particular problems that I was having about from the perspective of relationships, um, and I've done this 4 times now, and one of the things that I've noticed, not from the first time, but after the second time, is I've almost like lost, not lost, but almost like pushed down my sexual desires as opposed to the desires of wanting to build
Mhm.
something positive with a woman, with
Mhm.
someone to like build a life with. And by the third and fourth time, it's almost like solidified that like, yeah, this is like, and we've spoken about like, me recently becoming a nephew and all these things that have seemed to like culminate in the same time frame, which is, I don't know, I'm going to call it synchronistic for lack of a better term. I mean, I think that is the term that I would use, but yeah, it's man, such is life, hey. Such is life. Just keep on the journey and just keep doing these things and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure, brother. I really appreciate it, man. I truly do. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you, man. All right. Well, we will convene soon. And
Definitely.
I can't wait to give you a big bear hug and part
Waiting for it, brother.
it.
So, Jai Ganesh, Jai Shri Hanuman, Jai Anjaneya, Jai Shri Ram,
Jai Ganesh, Jai Shri Ram, Jai Bajrang Bali.
Jai Bajrang Bali. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, bro. Take care.